Welcome back to the deep dive. You know how this works. You share the sources, the stories, and we dive in. We look for the patterns, the psychology, the little moments that make everything click.
And today's source is really something. It's a masterclass in relational psychology, but it's disguised as an English learning narrative. We're doing a deep dive into a text called Wife or Maid.
Wife or Maid?
Wow. Yeah, and on the surface, it's about a married couple, Louisa and George. But if you look at the structure, it's this incredibly detailed chronological case study. It shows you, step by step, how a person's identity can get just eroded.
Right, when your self-worth is pitted against what a family expects from you, the power dynamics.
Exactly that.
Okay, so let's set our mission for this. We are going to trace the full emotional journey of Louisa. She starts out as this, happy, independent 38-year-old, and she ends up feeling completely invisible, unappreciated. Basically, she's pushed into the role of an unpaid servant in her own home.
And our goal here, I think, is to really dissect the turning points. Where did the communication fail?
Yeah.
When did George's passivity become, well, actively destructive?
And how did she finally reclaim her independence? And this is the really critical part. Rebuild her marriage on a foundation of, actual equity.
That last point is everything. We're not just analyzing a toxic family. That's part of it for sure. But we're looking at the specific costs, the emotional, the relational costs that the story describes when a personal identity is just sacrificed.
Sacrificed for what, though?
For an arrangement. In this case, it was a financially convenient living situation. We have to pay really close attention to the language used, especially how it describes George's denial.
And Luisa's internal suffering.
Yes, because it's a roadmap. It shows you exactly how these unspoken expectations can metastasize. They grow into a kind of relational abuse.
And the tension is there right from the start, which makes the contrast with how they first met so jarring. So let's look at the foundation of their relationship before it all just, fractured.
Let's do it.
So we meet Louisa. She's 38, works in a small city office, and George is 44. The source is really careful to establish this before picture.
Yeah.
Louisa's life was, quiet, but George brought this kindness, this humor.
A connection. And that initial connection is, I think, the blueprint for how they eventually fix things.
Right.
Then at a friend's dinner, the story says Louisa was shy, but George engaged her.
He talked to her first.
He did. And it doesn't focus on some grand romance. It's not about fireworks. It focuses on one single shared moment.
The cold soup.
Cold soup. They laughed about the cold soup. And that detail, it feels small, but it's the emotional anchor for everything that follows. That shared, simple laughter, it created a genuine comfort, a feeling of emotional safety for Louisa.
It proved they could connect authentically when it was just them.
Exactly, when it was just the two of them.
And that foundation seems solid. I mean, they dated for a year. That suggests it wasn't a rushed decision. He proposes, she happily accepts. When it's just Louisa and George, everything works.
But the second he decides to introduce her into his established family structure, that's when the first cracks appear. And what's fascinating is how the family reacts. They don't just, dislike her. It's more strategic than that.
You called it a campaign earlier. It feels like social warfare.
It's a coordinated nonverbal campaign of exclusion. He takes her to his big house. And the house itself is a symbol, right? Of his established life, his family, his rules.
And she has to enter that space to meet his parents and his younger sister.
Right. And Louisa, she's trying to get their acceptance. So she performs the expected social ritual. She brings flowers and a cake. A peace offering almost.
And the response is a total rejection, not just of the gifts, but of her presence.
Let's break down these specific chilling details because they're the first huge warning signs. And Louisa, pretty understandably, she tries to rationalize them away.
So the mother smiled but said little.
Right. It's passive, it's not openly hostile, but there's zero warmth. It's the bare minimum of social decency.
The father just shakes her hand. Again, functional, but so distant. There's no welcome to the family vibe there at all.
None. And then you have the sister. The sister is the one who really goes for it. The text says she ignored Louisa completely.
Ignored her in a formal introduction.
This is a really strong marker of covert aggression. It's not a misunderstanding. It's an active, intentional choice to communicate disapproval without having to say a single word.
And when the criticism is silent like that, it's so much harder to address. You can't fight a ghost.
You can't. And it forces the target, in this case Louisa, to question her own perception of reality. Did that just happen? Am I imagining this?
That's the key psychological mechanism, isn't it? Louisa immediately minimizes the whole situation to try and preserve that feeling of safety she gets from George.
Yes, she rationalizes. She'd tell herself, and this is a direct quote, "I told myself maybe they are just quiet." She's already starting that process of self-sacrifice.
She's prioritizing his reality and the idea of their relationship over the really uncomfortable truth her intuition is screaming at her.
It's a protective mechanism. It's so common when the stakes are this high, an impending marriage. But the family just doubles down on that message at the wedding itself.
Right. It was a small ceremony. This should have been the one place where emotional support was guaranteed. Instead, George's family treats the whole event like it's some kind of imposition.
They barely smiled. The mother wore a black dress.
A black dress to a wedding? I mean, come on, that's not subtle.
It's not subtle at all. In Western culture, that suggests mourning, solemnity. It's the absolute opposite of a celebration. The family is communicating that Louisa's entry into their circle is a loss, not a gain.
And the sister left early.
Of course she did. They're defining her role as an outsider before she even steps across the threshold of their home as a married woman.
So after getting all of these massive, undeniable red flags, they make the single biggest mistake in the whole story. They decide to move in with them.
And we have to look at the motivations here because they're completely mismatched. George's reason, the source tells us, was purely practical. It would save money.
While Louisa's was purely emotional, she wanted to be close to him.
And that imbalance is what creates the disaster. George chose financial convenience, which required zero effort from him. It let him keep the status quo in his comfortable life.
But Louisa chose love and proximity, which required her to tolerate an immense emotional cost by agreeing to move into that house where she was already so explicitly unwelcome.
She was unwittingly signing a contract for unpaid, unappreciated labor. She sacrificed her privacy, her independence, all for George's financial comfort. That one small decision to save money is the functional contract that almost destroys their entire marriage.
And the exploitation of that contract, it starts almost immediately.
Instantly. The narrative shifts seamlessly from that social exclusion to the immediate imposition of labor. Louisa begins by, trying to win them over through contribution.
Right, she's trying to be helpful. She wakes up early, makes breakfast for everyone, cleans the kitchen, washes the dishes. She even helps the mother with the laundry.
She's doing what we might call traditional wife work. She's trying to demonstrate her value, her goodwill, as a new member of the household. But we need to look at this through the lens of emotional labor and unpaid domestic work.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, the emotional labor is the work of keeping the household harmonious, right? Anticipating needs, managing everyone's feelings, which Louisa was doing diligently. The domestic work is the physical stuff.
But the immediate painful detail that just breaks that emotional contract is the mother's response.
Or lack of response.
Exactly. She never said thank you.
That lack of appreciation is what transforms effort into expectation. A thank you validates the person. The absence of it validates only the duty.
So by never saying thank you, the mother is establishing that Louisa isn't doing a voluntary act of kindness.
No. She's performing a mandatory chore that she's barely even competent to execute. It shifts Louisa from being an equal partner trying to help to a subordinate worker who is expected to serve.
And the mother quickly capitalizes on that shift. She goes from just silently accepting the help to overtly demanding it. She hands Louisa a long list of chores.
A literal list. It formalizes the transition.
Yeah.
It specifies things like cleaning the floors, the windows, the bathroom.
These aren't small tasks. This is deep cleaning.
Exactly. The intensity of the work is critical here.
Yeah.
This wasn't just, hey, can you help tidy up? This was the mother basically saying, you will now assume the entire burden of household maintenance.
And throughout this escalating crisis,
Yeah.
where is George? He sees her exhausted after finishing all this work, and his response is just, it's devastatingly insufficient. He says, that's nice, Louisa, you're good at helping.
Let's look closer at that phrase. That's nice. It's a statement of, really, denial and self-preservation.
Yeah.
He's validating the action the chore got done, which means his comfort level is maintained.
Right.
But he completely ignores the emotional cost, the physical toll, the escalating power imbalance that is actively crushing his wife.
The story notes, I wanted him to say more, but he didn't say anything else. She's identifying his failure right there. He's choosing the path of least resistance.
He's sacrificing his wife's well-being to avoid a confrontation with his mother. Pure and simple.
And this passive complicity from George, it just empowers the others. It lets the power structure become even more pronounced, especially with the younger sister.
The sister is the story's direct emotional antagonist. She's a clear marker of the household hierarchy. She is completely exempt from labor.
The text says she stayed in her room all day and did no housework.
Zero housework. And yet, she feels completely entitled to demand service from Louisa. Can you make me tea, Louisa? Can you iron my dress?
So it's not even a request, it's a command.
It's a command. And this contrast is what proves the Shores were never about maintaining the house. They were about defining Louisa's low status. If the house genuinely needed cleaning, his sister could have helped.
But she didn't. She demanded service instead.
And the situation just deteriorates until Louisa has to explicitly name the problem, which is a huge step. She's starting to assert a boundary. She tells George, I feel like a maid, not a wife.
And George's response is just immediate minimization. They just need time, Louisa. Please be patient.
It's a classic avoidance tactic.
Yeah.
He dismisses her valid complaint. He shifts the burden of adaptation entirely onto her.
Yeah.
You be patient. And he just denies the observable reality.
And the narrative confirms his failure. It says, but nothing changed.
And it gets worse.
Yeah.
The source gives us physical evidence of the tax this was taking on her. Louisa was forced to wash clothes by hand, and her hands hurt.
That detail is so important. It bridges the abstract emotional suffering with a concrete physical reality. She isn't just mentally tired, her body is literally breaking down.
It is, under the strain of this unappreciated, grueling labor.
And the emotional climax of this whole section for me has to be the corn soup incident.
Oh yes, the soup.
She makes corn soup in the winter. It's a gesture of comfort, of care, of domestic contribution, and the mother.
The mother calls it too salty, you don't know how to cook. And then with just devastating finality, she threw it away.
Threw it away.
This is more than a critique of her cooking. It's an act of covert psychological aggression. The mother isn't looking for better soup, she's looking for total dominance.
By throwing it away, she's rejecting Louisa's competence, her effort, her very presence in the kitchen. She's signaling that nothing Louisa offers will ever be good enough.
It's designed specifically to humiliate and to suppress.
And Louisa wanted to cry. The immediate consequence of this cruelty is that she retreats inward. She stops seeing my friends. She stopped going out. She completely isolates herself.
Isolation is the natural response to chronic emotional invalidation. When your efforts are constantly rejected and you're humiliated, you withdraw. Unfortunately, she withdrew from her source of support too.
And the final, just heartbreaking insult in this section is that George, her supposed partner, didn't notice.
He didn't notice her complete emotional collapse.
We have to pause here. We have to really analyze George's indifference. We keep calling him passively complicit, but his failure to notice her complete social isolation, not seeing her friends, not leaving the house, that suggests a more active choice.
You're right. Is it genuine unawareness? Or is this a kind of calculated blindness? A blindness designed to protect his comfortable, labor-free life?
I think the text points to the latter, or at least a willful negligence that amounts to the same thing. George was the direct beneficiary of Louisa's suffering.
Absolutely. Her work provided him with a clean house, clean clothes, and a mother who wasn't complaining to him. So his indifference served his own convenience.
Because if he noticed her pain, he would have had to do something about it.
He would have had to act. And action meant confronting his family and sacrificing his own comfort. By choosing not to notice, he maximized his benefit while minimizing his responsibility.
That's the definition of relational denial.
It is. And because George failed to notice her withdrawal, Louisa is forced into this desperate fight just for physical space and a voice. It's a struggle for self-preservation.
She tries again. She declares, I don't want to live like this. But George's response is still so rigid, it's tethered to his family system. My mother needs help, Louisa.
He frames his mother's demands as these unassailable needs, while Louisa's need for self-respect is treated as, just an optional preference.
But she pushes back, and with such powerful clarity, she articulates the identity crisis she's facing. She says, I am not your mother's worker. I have no space, no voice if someone asks me to clean, cook, or fold.
No space, no voice.
Yeah.
That is the core realization. It's not just that she doesn't have a physical room of her own. She lacks relational autonomy. She cannot exist as a subject as Louisa. She can only exist as an object, the maid who performs a service.
Her very presence in the common areas is a prompt for labor.
Yes. And George's response to this plea just solidifies his detachment. He thought it was overreacting.
Ugh. That's classic minimization. It's what people call emotional gaslighting.
It is. He's attacking her perception of reality. He's telling her that her feelings, her experience, they're disproportionate to the situation. It signals he has fundamentally failed to grasp that she is fighting for her psychological survival inside their marriage.
And the external pressure from his family just reinforces this archaic idea of what a marriage is. While George went out on weekends, Louisa stayed home.
And the mother uses this as a cultural weapon to reinforce her control. She says, a good wife stays at home and works.
This is the explicit statement of the family's contract. A wife is a worker confined to the domestic sphere.
But the narrative gives Louisa this internal counterpoint, a lifeline, the memory of her own mother. She missed her mother, who worked, smiled, sang, and danced while cooking.
That memory is so important. It proves to her that work and joy are not mutually exclusive. Her own mother was living proof that domestic life could be vibrant and self-defined.
In stark contrast to the stifling, joyless labor that was being imposed on her by George's family.
So because the house was so actively toxic, Louisa seeks her only escape externally. She goes to the park. The story says it was her only quiet time.
The fact that a married woman has to leave her own home to find peace and quiet, it just speaks volumes about the emotional toxicity of that environment. Her home had become her cage.
And all this chronic stress, this lack of self-expression, it eventually manifests physically. The sister, who is still the chief emotional antagonist, verbally attacks her appearance.
She says, marriage changed you, Louisa. You look old.
Ouch. That insult is just devastating because it leverages Louisa's own internal pain. Chronic stress and exhaustion, they show up on your face. You get tired eyes, drawn features.
The sister's comment forces Louisa to confront the physical evidence of her identity loss. So Louisa looks in the mirror, she sees her tired eyes and her gone smile, and she asks the ultimate question of this stage. Where is the old me?
That's the bottom. That's the deepest point of the identity crisis. She has literally lost herself inside someone else's definition of who she should be.
She realizes she has become a ghost of her former self. And that realization is the necessary precursor to action. You have to see the problem before you can fix it.
And then the narrative introduces the pivotal catalyst, the thing that breaks the silence, her cousin, Phoebe.
The phone call to Phoebe serves as this critical bridge to the outside world. And initially, Louisa protects the facade. She lies. She says married life is good.
But the internal truth is just screaming to get out. She wanted to tell Phoebe everything, that she felt like a maid, unappreciated, just cooking and cleaning in silence.
The importance of that call with Phoebe is that it establishes an external witness to her suffering. In these controlling situations, the victim is often forced to maintain silence and secrecy.
Right.
So the mere existence of someone outside that toxic system who can hear the truth, it validates the truth itself. It prepares her for the final confrontation.
And that breaking point comes. It's a sequence of these small, compounding injuries on one critical morning. It just demonstrates the family's complete lack of gratitude.
Or consideration. Louisa makes tea and toast. The mother immediately complained about no sugar.
George came, ate, and didn't wait for me. The sister asks for a sandwich and didn't say thank you. It's just a storm of this transactional, ungrateful behavior.
And notice George's behavior again. He should be the mediator, the shield, at the very least the connective tissue. Instead, he just shows complete indifference. He prioritizes his own routine over connecting with his wife.
His actions confirm that his alignment is with his family's expectations, not with Louisa, and that triggers her final, direct accusation.
She finally forces the issue. Your family does not like me. She names the emotional truth. And George, predictably, retreats to his safe denial.
That's not true. They just want help.
That is George's last defense of the status quo. He's pretending the issue is about labor allocation, not about relational respect. But then Louisa delivers the most insightful, cutting question in the entire story.
She cuts right through his denial. She asks, why don't they ask you?
That question is brilliant. It's brilliant because it forces him to confront his own complicity. If the labor is truly so necessary, why is it exclusively outsourced to the one person they all seem to dislike?
And what's his response?
He ignored me.
Silence.
That silence is an admission of guilt. He knows the labor is being unfairly dumped on Louisa, and he knows he's benefiting from it. He has no rational defense, so he retreats into silence. He's effectively saying, I choose my comfort over answering your difficult, truthful question.
That denial, his refusal to be accountable, it basically gives his mother permission for the ultimate humiliation the next day. The mother makes Louisa clean all the windows, and then hours later she claims Louisa missed one.
This is a perfect example of what you could call gaslighting through labor. The goal isn't clean windows. The goal is control. It's the destruction of Louisa's competence and her self-efficacy.
By claiming she missed one, the mother ensures Louisa knows she can never meet the standard no matter how hard she tries.
She's attacking Louisa's perception of her own effort, making her question her own sanity. Louisa felt like crying. This is the lowest emotional point. She realizes her effort is completely meaningless to them.
So the decision to leave is now fully unavoidable. She tells George again, "I won't stay." And George, true to form, plays his final card of inaction, the financial argument.
Where will we go, Louisa? We can't pay rent.
This just reveals his entire hierarchy of needs. He is willing to sacrifice his wife's happiness and identity to maintain his zero-effort, financially comfortable life in that big house.
But Louisa, she's fortified now by this internal realization. She offers a concrete solution, a definition of partnership. She says, we can try, we can live in a small apartment. She's offering a shared struggle for freedom.
And George rejects the struggle. He insists, "I like it here," and the narrative notes that he looked away from her.
That lack of eye contact is a physical retreat from the commitment of their marriage. Louisa felt this immense anger, but she held it in. She saved her energy for action.
That moment marks the functional end of their marriage inside that house. He chose the property over her.
He did. But what saved her was finally calling her cousin Phoebe and telling her everything. That emotional validation from an external source, it provided the critical reframing she needed.
And Phoebe's words gave her the psychological ammunition. "You are not their maid, you are George's wife."
That simple statement redefined her reality. It was independent of the toxic household's rules, and it gave her the strength to finally act.
So that validation from Phoebe was the catalyst. But Louisa still had to be the one to execute the separation. And reclaiming her agency starts immediately with a simple refusal to perform the expected labor.
And she uses the bare minimum of conversational energy to do it. That very night, she goes home, but she did not cook. When George asks her why, her response is just, "I'm tired."
No long explanation, no argument, no defense, just a simple, firm boundary. This is the first time in the whole story she's prioritized her own state over the household's demands.
And the reaction, which is relayed through George, just confirms how deeply entitled the family felt to her service. George reports, "My mother said, you are lazy."
But the judgment just doesn't have any power over her anymore. Her response is so firm, let her say what she wants. She is officially rejecting their entire moral and judgmental framework.
And that rejection of their authority, it culminates the very next morning. The mother hands Louisa a dress to wash by hand, a symbolic, demanding chore, clearly testing this new boundary.
And Louisa's answer is the first direct, non-passive refusal in the entire story. She just says, "No, I won't."
This is the moment the implicit contract is broken. The mother, recognizing her total loss of control, she shouts the final desperate defense of the power structure. "This is my house, you cannot say no to me."
And that statement is absolutely critical. It defines Louisa's subjugation as an inherent part of the house's rules.
So Louisa uses the mother's own power structure against her to establish her freedom. She says, okay, then I will leave. If her existence in the house depends on servitude, she chooses to define her own absence, her own agency.
And she does it. She packs a small bag and immediately goes to Phoebe's house for 3 days. The contrast in location is so important here.
It is. Phoebe's house was described as quiet, clean, and safe. This physical space, this sanctuary, it allowed her to experience peace and rebuild her emotional reserves. It confirmed that the house itself was the poison.
And in Phoebe's safe space, Louisa smiled for the first time in weeks.
Once she was physically safe and emotionally stable, she initiates the final, defining negotiation with George. And this isn't a plea. It's an ultimatum based on self-respect.
She forces him to confront the reality of their relationship by asking the central, defining question of the whole story.
Do you want a wife or a maid?
That question just removes all the ambiguity. It strips away all the financial excuses, and it forces him to choose between his comfortable status quo life and a real partnership with her.
And she holds him explicitly accountable for his passive complicity. She states it clearly. It is, you let them treat me like this. She forces him to own his failure to protect her.
To define their marital unit as separate from his family.
And this time, the confrontation works. It works precisely because Louisa is not pleading from a position of exhaustion inside that toxic environment. She's negotiating from a position of external power and self-respect.
She has proven she can survive without him.
That leverage is what finally compels George to act. He commits. I'll find a small place for us, just us, I promise Louisa. That promise to find a separate, autonomous home, it signifies his ultimate commitment to her and their partnership, over the demands of his family.
And the narrative emphasizes his commitment through his actions. He looked for flats daily. They find a small apartment, one bedroom, small kitchen. The space is defined by its independence, not by its size or its wealth.
It's a fresh start, untainted. And the move itself is so powerfully symbolic. As they walked away from the big house, the family watched but said nothing.
Their silence now isn't one of settled disapproval. It's one of acknowledged defeat. The power structure has been dismantled.
It has. And Louisa and George walked away holding hands.
Yeah.
That action, holding hands, it's the physical sign that they have reformed their unified front. They are prioritizing their unit over the extended family. They're allies again.
So this deep dive really culminates here in this small apartment where they finally get to define a shared home on their own terms. This is the real success story, the establishment of equity.
It's the complete antithesis of the big toxic house. The story uses these beautiful, simple, symbolic actions to define their new reality. They unpack together, they put plates and clothes in their places, they open the curtains.
And the space immediately felt warm and safe. They didn't need luxury, they needed autonomy and emotional safety.
And that first shared meal contrasts so perfectly with the judgmental atmosphere of George's family. Louisa cooked pasta, and George helped by setting cups on the floor.
On the floor.
On the floor. And they ate together and they laughed. This imperfect, shared, joyful moment is the exact opposite of the mother's demand for perfect corn soup, followed by immediate judgment.
And Louisa immediately felt happy. I felt peace.
Peace is the currency of her freedom. It wasn't just about escaping chores. It was about escaping constant scrutiny, judgment, and the demand to perform. This new shared space allowed the real foundation of their relationship, that kindness and laughter they found over the cold soup, to finally resurface and flourish.
And the most important change is the visible transformation in George. It's demonstrated through the establishment of a genuine, equitable partnership based on concrete action, not just words.
Their new routine is built on shared respect. George ate and smiled after breakfast, a small but significant detail. And crucially, they shared chores. The narrative is very explicit about George's contributions.
He washed dishes, cleaned the floor, and took out the trash.
This detail is everything. In the big house, Louisa was expected to do all the labor. In the small apartment, George took on traditionally feminine duties, dishes and floor cleaning, as well as taking out the trash. They established equity through visible, shared effort.
And Louisa felt loved and special precisely because, as the text says, we did this together.
The emotional reconnection just followed naturally from that functional partnership. They started watching movies again, walking in the park, holding hands, re-engaging in the activities they enjoyed when they were dating.
And most importantly, they began saying sorry and I love you. They restored the emotional vulnerability and communication that had been completely choked by that family environment.
The relational space was healed because the physical boundaries had finally been established.
The final step was establishing permanence and ownership, making the space undeniably theirs. They added small personal touches, a table, chairs, a rug, a photo. They were making it our home.
And their first anniversary in this new space becomes a celebration of their freedom and their restored selfhood. A small cake, one candle, dancing, holding each other. They felt free.
And Louisa finally wore her favorite dress and felt like herself again. George affirms her restored self-image. He says, "You look beautiful, Louisa."
Which is true appreciation. He's acknowledging her identity, not just her function. It's the direct opposite of his mother rejecting her corn soup.
And the story culminates in Louisa's triumphant, reflective declaration of independence. It summarizes this entire deep dive, and it provides the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener.
She affirms, I am Louisa.
Yeah.
I am George's wife, not a maid. I have small things, but I have love, peace, and joy. I have my own life now. I have my own home. I can wake up and do what I want.
Yeah.
No one tells me to clean or cook all the time. I can be myself. I'm not living for others. I'm living for myself.
She moved from being defined by her servitude to being defined by her autonomy. That is the sound of an identity completely restored, secured by physical space and true partnership.
Okay.
So if we look back at the beginning of this, the difference between the soul-crushing expectations imposed on Louisa in that big family house versus the self-defining freedom she found in the small shared apartment is just. It's profound.
It is.
This narrative is such a powerful reminder that true partnership often requires physically separating from external forces, even if they're family, even if they're cultural, that actively undermine the core relationship's equity and respect.
Absolutely. The biggest lesson here isn't about escaping housework. It's about defining boundaries. Louisa gained love, peace, and joy when she secured her own physical space, separate from that external judgment, because that space gave her the necessary psychological distance to finally live for herself. The small apartment became the foundation for her self-worth.
And that leads us to our closing provocative thought for you, the listener. Louisa's story shows us that convenience, in this case, George's financial comfort, it came at the cost of a huge emotional debt, which was paid entirely by his wife.
Hmm.
So if you take anything away from this deep dive, maybe consider this. How often do we, in our own lives, minimize a partner's valid complaint by just defaulting to our own zone of comfort? And how often do external expectations, whether they're cultural or familial or professional, crowd out the essential space you need to define who you are within your own partnership, making you feel less like a partner and more like a function?
Take the space you need. Define your role, or someone else will define it for you, and often at great cost.
That is a truth worth fighting for. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.